Welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode number 35. I'm Jason Leskiw, Preps reporter, here with Josh Hart, our fearless leader, sports editor of the Daily News. We're going to talk a little bit about baseball, softball. We've had a couple surprises, one not surprising type of surprise, I guess you'd say, in Kelso Softball and how well they've been doing, especially Capri Franzen and the power showing she's
a surprising, offering. Not kind of surprise.
Yeah.
Some great descriptors there.
I know, I'm a writer, right? Yeah. Olivia Gray, for those who aren't familiar with the name, is over at Woodlands, softball player. She was a transfer and had to step back a bit, and she...
Yeah, why don't we talk about that?
We're going to talk about that. Okay. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, she was at Kalama her freshman year. She led them to the district playoffs. The team was pretty decent that year. She moves to Woodland. I don't know all the details behind it just yet, but we're certainly something I'm hoping to talk with her about some point this season. So she transfers to Woodland, and according to transfer rules, she has to sit out last year. So all we heard about last year was how great this JV pitcher was, and clearly this season she's shown just how talented she is. She's a Portland State commit. She struck out 14 and 13 and one-hitters and no-hitters. Clearly has something going for Woodland. But why did she have to ever sit out?
Yeah, no, it's kind of silly. I mean, look, it punishes her, right? I mean, there's the obvious factor of like, hey, you don't want you don't want to have players start transferring in any sport just to play for a certain team. But I mean, we see people transfer all the time in other sports.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle Public Schools. I know it's a little bit different because you can go to whatever school you want within the Seattle Public School system, but they still have a rule where you have to transfer for academic purposes. Right? You have to be looking out for your schooling, which is what high school is about, first and foremost. Yet we see time and time again Rainier Beach and Garfield and all of these players transfer. I mean, heck, yeah. the top player on Rainier Beach was at Nathan Hale last year. Why do they get to do this time and time again, and yet we punish?
And it's not, I mean, speaking of Kalama transfers, I mean, Colby Rader pitched for Kalama last year, and just pitched for Kelso a couple days ago. In both situations, Gray and Rader, they're non-league they're transferring out. They're not transferring within the league, etc. It's really a bizarre set of circumstance there.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some WIA rule that says if you don't move or if you are deemed to be moving for athletic purposes or whatever. But from my understanding, it's not like she's going to like this superpower softball school.
Right.
She's not transferring to I mean, no offense to Woodland softball, they're a fine softball program, but she's not transferring to dominate at Woodland softball.
Yeah.
There's
no D1 school just outside of Woodland that she's hoping to be recruited
right.
by.
I mean, she's already committed to Portland State. I mean, like, it seems weird that we allow Rainier Beach, Garfield, and all sorts of schools to take these transfers. I mean,
Christian.
when is this? When has look at the South Sound. I mean, like, when has a South Sound how many South Sound players have truly stayed their whole career in the South Sound, basketball players in the South Sound, without transferring up to Seattle school? And yet we punish a softball girl for going from a 2B school to a 2A school that's 8 miles away.
Come on. Like, really? Yeah, no.
But it's good to see her succeeding. I would like to know, I haven't looked into it fully yet. Certainly a story I'd love to do. But why did she have to sit out? I mean, like, it's just crazy to me. I've never seen such a preposterous, like, And I'm sure she had fun playing JV. But let's match her up with her talent level, because that's not fair to the JV players either last year.
Yeah, I mean, you figure it's not fair to GSHL 2A opponents at this point, right? Let alone if you're, it's bizarre. It's really,
Yeah, but as far as Woodlands goes this year, I mean, softball's so dependent on pitching.
Yeah.
You have to like Woodlands' chances in the GSHL 2A, and then you get into districts with the defending champs, WF West. So, it'll be interesting to see what Woodland can do. They were a really talented young team last year, and so it'll be interesting to see, how far they can go this year.
Right. Let's stick with Woodland for a sec, too, and transfer over to baseball. The baseball program has got off to a hot start. First-year head coach Hunter Huddleston, alumnus, obviously has strong ties to their athletic programs, even, before going there. So he's so far has got them moving in the right direction. As we were just talking about momentarily before we started recording, Woodland has had a couple games here, a couple major comebacks in late innings, 5-run comebacks where, that's the type of thing where, if you're coming back late in the game, those type of wins usually aren't sustainable. But the fact that they're showing this type of grit and ability early on is a pretty important thing, I think.
Yeah, I think you love to see that as a baseball coach. The baseball can be such a, if you start to struggle, it can really get you in a hole. Mm-hmm. And I think Hunter put on his questionnaire one of the team's strengths was sick of losing. And I think it's shown early this year that they don't want to lose, and they might not be the most talented team out there, but it's been neat to see kind of what Hunter's been able to do, getting them to scrap and have some success despite getting down early. I'm sure he'd like to see them not get down in holes early, but nice to see be able to string some innings together.
Yeah, and so that's something that. Like I was saying, it's not sustainable either, though. So at some point they have to figure out a way. Okay, let's start scoring in the first inning and the second inning, and let's prevent 5-run innings from the opponent and things like that. But I think that just knowing,
I hope
from
that's
already
was already on their checklist to begin the season.
Right.
Well, it's like no, don't allow the big inning.
Right. But I mean, that's something that in the past they've struggled with a little bit, and so they anytime you can build this type of confidence early on, I think is really important. The confidence in baseball is so major. It's probably more than any other sport. You get when a guy's throwing 75, 80 miles an hour, and you have really no time to think. I mean, you see the ball coming off the pitcher, and you've already really started your swing. It's just at that point you gotta figure out, okay, am I gonna continue my swing, or am I gonna stop right now? And having that confidence in their hitting, it could go a long way. They just got to figure out if they can get it going a little bit sooner. So, and then on that note, Kelso Softball, there's a girl there, Capri Franzen, who last season was kind of their third pitcher. Didn't get a lot of action. Definitely played in the field quite a bit. Was in the lineup any way she could get in. And now has a pair of homers this week. So that's something she didn't display. And really, Kelso didn't hit a lot of homers last year. There were a ton of doubles and, a couple triples, lots of singles, stuff like that, things that move the runners around. But as far as base clearing play, I want to say they, as a team, had 4 or so homers on the season. So, that's something that they've had good pitching. And I was down there about 2 weeks ago, and they were, the confidence level there, speaking of confidence, was through the roof. They get to state last season, they get eliminated early on, and it was, and the play itself that they were effectively eliminated on was kind of a fluke play where a girl lost her footing at third base, was thrown out, and it was right there. I think had she not lost her footing, I think she had a good, based on who was coming to bat, had a pretty good chance of getting a run in. I mean, at State you're facing good pitching, but they took that and they really ran with it. And according to players, Coach Dean Sorensen, they were at a point before the season started where they were in the middle of last season when they were playing their best softball. So, and Capri Franzen, I think, is a good example of that, the power she's displayed.
Well, they just have so much depth, and you have to admire a program that's able to have that continued success year after year. I know every coach will preach next man up, but Kelso lost some key pieces last year, and they returned Jordan Reagan and Megan Holt and Capri Franzen and Haley Parsons and Kinsey Williams, and you returned Sadie Harris.
Right.
It took me 6 people just to get to the last year's MVP. They're just, you have to admire what they can do with their program and the sustained success they continue to have, and we talk about it, and it all comes down to pitching, and they got a couple great ones, and when you can hit like they do, that obviously helps as well. They obviously knocked off WF West early, in Chehalis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously a big win. They faced some stiff talent early. It'd be interesting to see if they can kind of continue that throughout the season. That doesn't offer them, the stiffest test in their league play, but can they use these early season tests to prepare themselves for a deep postseason run? And it'll be interesting to see what they can accomplish. You got to like their chances, though.
Right, and they made it a point to match up with top competition. Montesano, the 1A state champ, WF West, 2A state champ, playing a bunch of 4A schools in Vancouver on their non-league schedule, and so they're a team. I think they haven't won a state title since hadn't been that long. It was 2010 or so, but they're a team that I think for our softball teams, Woodlands obviously, the way things look now with Gray pitching, it's like you got to favor them as having a good shot. But they're another team that should at least make a good run.
Yeah.
So.
And I think we touched on this last podcast, but just to not leave them out, it seems like Tudor Lake's picked up where they've left off.
Yeah.
Rainier's had some early season struggles, but Reese Schimmel homered early. She's going to be one to watch. Obviously, her older sister is our reigning all-area softball player of the year, Haley Schimmel, and a Portland State commit. So you got to imagine Rainier by the end of the year is back where they are. So you have the typical faces, and it looks like Woodlands joined the pack too. And I think Castle Rock certainly has some talent as well. Softball certainly a strength right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Tudor Lake as another example of sustained success. And now with a new coach, I was intrigued. I mean, they lose so many, or not so many, but a couple very, very important pieces there. And I saw them about a week ago, and they looked like the same team.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I always kind of ask coaches about this, but how does once in a generational type talents impact a program? Like how will Ilwaco basketball respond to the loss of Mackenzie Keck and Eliza Bannister and Madeline Jacobson? A lot of times what you'll see is 5-6 years down the road, when the girls who grew up watching them get in, all of a sudden the program is back on its footing again. So a lot of times you'll see these talented players come through, and it takes about 3 or 4 or 5 years before the next, I want to play softball because they were so good, it was fun to watch. When you have sustained success like that, it's like every crop of new people's like, I want to go play softball, I want to go work out hard, how do I get to where they're at? And so it's interesting to see kind of how those programs continue to thrive.
Yeah, definitely motivating for a lot of folks. So on that note, also, I sat down with Brandon Walker, Kalama baseball coach, obviously also an assistant on Kalama's football team, state champion football team,
and a basketball referee.
We talked about officiating a little bit there, and he brought up a few important things towards the end of his interview that I think are good to know for everybody. And I'm also going to mention this is something we'll be putting something out on in a week or two, probably closer to a week from now. there's an official shortage. There is an official shortage in Southwest Washington. It's a national issue at this point, and it's it's not quite to that mode of, hey, this is a critical problem. Now, if they drop any lower in their numbers, it will be. And that's when high school sport, the future of high school sports really, and the present in the next year or two could potentially be threatened.
Right. And in spring, it can impact so much because you saw last year is when you have a backlog of games because of rainouts, you're really going to start to notice that official shortage. I think we saw it in some basketball where JV games didn't have full staff or JV games were being canceled because referees couldn't, varsity was the priority. Get out and officiate, guys. Like the money's halfway decent. It gets you involved in the sport. It helps out. It's a service to the community, and it's fun. Like I get that there's some struggles with. I was a soccer official for 7 years, and I get that there's struggles with parents or coaches or whatever yelling at you. But
if you keep your nose to the ground, it's really not that bad.
Yeah, you can kind of shake it off, and that goes to parents and coaches too. Let's I think Frank Martin, the South Carolina men's basketball coach, was saying do you really think this person that's taking time out of their weekend, their Saturday, coming and officiating your 12-year-old youth basketball game cares who wins or loses? No, they're trying to make $20. Support themselves through college or whatever. They don't care who wins or loses. They're trying to do their best job. So give them a break. Let the officials thrive, and we'll see more of them. And when you see more of them, you have more opportunities for training and that thing. So the same officials aren't working 20 games a week.
Right. And I'm going to also, there's a story we have online from last March or April that details the financial impact for first year officials a little bit better than this. But I'll tell you, you're going to start, you can make okay money. But if you got student loans to pay off, if you're a college kid, absolutely inquire. I would especially encourage college kids or recent college graduates to inquire, because we both know how much student loan debt can hamper you. If you're trying to buy a house and you want to officiate part-time, this is a really good way to start stocking away a down payment, or if you want a little bit bigger house, hey, this type of thing it's a type of opportunity that will help pay for things like that. So,
and you just heard something super rare: a journalist talk about buying houses.
Yeah, well, especially, hey, that's the one thing I'm on the discount cereal aisle, but yeah, I gotta have the nice house. That's important, right? So, anyway, so on that note, we'll jump into this interview here with Brandon Walker, again, Kalama baseball coach, and thanks for listening. All right, I'm here with Brandon Walker, head coach of Kalama baseball. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too shabby. Good. So, kind of for 2B schools. Actually, I was going to say you're in non-league play still, but for 2B schools, it's not the case.
Yeah, it came quick. You might have a game or two at your non-league schedule, and for us, the second game of the year was already a league game, so you're kind of jumping right into it.
Okay.
And it feels like we have game. So it's going to be nice to actually get on our field and have a practice for once. So yeah, it hits you quick. But yeah, you look around like the 1A schools here around the area. They have such a small league that they have a little bit of wiggle room, so to speak. With the non-league schedule at the beginning of the year, and get a chance to get their feet wet. But with us, we got to come out of the gates, ready to go. So it's a challenge, but at the same time, it's something that we look forward to.
Sorry. No.
Throw my keys and stuff.
All right. And then as far as the the competition level you guys have to deal with is crazy.
Yeah, the 2B league is tough. Top to bottom, I think. You look at the Wicaycombs, with all those kids coming back, and Adam, we just played them yesterday, and they're so well coached. John prepares them really well, and to like anytime you get that one guy on the mound, like Vetter, you know,
Right.
that can just win a ball game strictly just off his talent. You know, I think for the most part, this 2B league has that guy. You know,
Yeah.
And it makes it tough, especially in a doubleheader situation. You have one bad day, and there
Right.
goes your record. You know, so
Right.
yeah, it's a tough league. I'm glad that we're in it though, because it kind of better prepares you for that postseason if you can make it that far. So.
Right. Definitely a plus there. And I mean, there's been in the past, I want to say 5 or 6 years, in the Final Four, there's been 2 or more Central 2B teams.
Exactly.
Which, you know.
Yeah, with Wickhuycom and Napaline, you know, representing our league and our area, you know, really well last year. And in my opinion, Wickhuycom had every chance, every opportunity to win that game, you know, against the eventual state champion, you know.
Right.
So it was, you know, we will represent year in and year out. And, you know, so we're, at the same time, you put on that, you know, let's go to work kind of mentality every single night, because you never know. You could drop one to a team that you're, you know, on paper aren't supposed to lose to, but that's just how tough this league is.
Right. Who's, in the last couple of years, who's the best pitcher you've seen in this league? I know there's a few names that probably.
Oh man, yeah. You can go with a lot of different guys. You know, obviously last year with Wyatt Stanley,
Yeah.
Spencer Burdick at Adna, you know, James Anderson. Obviously, Wickhuycom's got. Seems like they got 4 or 5 different guys that they can throw at you, and they're all at least going to compete. You know,
They
so
absolutely do. Yeah.
you know, and Zach Vetter is just a stud. You know, you throw him out there, and you know, PL sounds like they got a guy now that's just, you know, can take over a game like he did last night. So, you know, and then we're young. We lack experience a little bit, and we know that. We've had way too many walks this year, but we have guys that will compete too, and they've shown like in other sports that they're willing to do so, and they're never going to back down. So I wouldn't say, you know, that we are, you know, at the bottom by any means, because we got some guys as well that could compete with anyone.
Right. Obviously, you guys have tons of athleticism.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we have we showed that, you know, this group obviously winning a football state championship. A lot of these guys are, you know, here playing baseball, and I know it's a completely different game, right? But that athleticism shows when you hit a ball, you know, deep in the outfield. You know, Tucker Wentworth's out there to track it down. You know, so we're glad to have him. You know, you got Alex Dyer making plays out there. You know, diving catch in left center field the other night. You know, so we have guys that really all over the place that they can just, you know, have an incredible amount of range. You know, Brennan Vance showing what he can do. Hayden Wilson's behind the plate with his arm. You know, so we have a tremendous amount of athletes. Now it's just kind of, you know, figuring out a way that we can kind of translate that to the game of baseball, because it is different. You know?
Right.
So, but yeah, as far as the athletes go, we certainly don't lack in that department.
Right. And so, with how difficult is that to take, you know, athleticism and especially, you know, these guys have played baseball for most of their lives.
Yeah.
But bringing that to, you know, combining the athleticism and teaching the game at this kind of level, especially in this league, what's the trick to that?
You know, if I had the trick, I don't think we'd be sitting at 500 right now. But no, in all seriousness, you know, it's not as easy as, you know, just going up and getting a jump ball in the corner of the end zone, you know, or you know, going up and getting a rebound in basketball or anything like that, you know. So that while the athletic ability helps, obviously it doesn't ever hurt. Game of baseball is just, it's more mental, you know. It's all the intangibles, all the other stuff that go into it that, you know, nobody ever really thinks about until you get out there on the field. You know, I always try to tell my players, like, you know, the game is full of ups and downs, and you can never get too high or too low, because you could do something great on one play, the very next play you can come back down and can bring back down to earth just like that, you know, within a matter of one play. So it's tricky, you know, and it's right now we have been pretty streaky as far as, you know, when things are going really well, you know, it's great, and when we have one error, you know, it seems like we've been, you know, compacting errors with errors, and you know, that's the game of baseball sometimes, and it's those teams, the great teams are the ones that can, you know, just have that next play mentality and that approach, you know. That's, so I guess, you know, to answer your question, you know, quicker is just having that next play mentality. So, and it's tough to do at this level with high school kids.
Okay.
So.
And baseball's also a sport defensively where, the athleticism will carry over more in defense than offense.
Yeah, no doubt.
But there's obviously the small things, tracking a fly ball when there's clouds in the sky and it looks exactly the same as the cloud, and things like that. Who in the last 2 years, has there been anything that stood out as far as, the detail things, who on this roster has been the person that's really stood out in terms of doing all those small things really well?
I always like to look at, I start with my catcher and that kind of stuff. He's the guy that hopefully will get you in the right position every single time. We're high on. We haven't been great at it so far, but we're high on communication before every single pitch.
Okay.
The game of baseball is just such a mental sport. That's one thing that you can control, which would be where you're going with the ball when the ball's hit to you. And so I guess Hayden Wilson, my catcher, he's grown so much in the way in his approach and his leadership that he's not great yet, and he'll admit that. But he's getting there, and his attention to detail and his baseball IQ is probably been the most consistent. I have a few other guys. Alex Dyer's just kind of more of a natural athlete. He's the quarterback, obviously, right? So he has that mindset, and he's played the game obviously his entire life. So as far as the IQ goes and knowledge of the game, those two guys probably stand out the most. But I'm also excited about some of our younger guys that we have. Tommy Brandenburg. He's been put already in these two league games. He's been put in tough situations, both on the mound and I'm starting him at short as a freshman. So he's walking in here, with a lot of high expectations. But he's a kid right now that I see has certainly, if not the most potential on the team as far as next level thinking. When it comes to baseball. So.
Okay.
And then the athletes like Tucker Wetmore and Brendan Vance, they're just so much more reactionary, and they use their base off of their athleticism, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, certainly as far as mentality, I'd look at those, Alex Dyer and Hayden Wilson. So
okay, kind of transitioning a little bit here. You were telling me a story yesterday about so there's an official shortage in the official shortage in the area, and it's not just in the area; it's around the country.
right.
Guys who have been officiating for 30 years are now retiring. They're hanging up the whistle, and nobody's coming in to replace them, or not enough guys, right?
Yeah.
You were telling me a story about how you got into officiating, and I found it really intriguing, and so I'm gonna have you tell it again.
Yeah, it's it helps obviously playing, right? And playing the game of basketball was always one of my most memorable moments when you think of your high school experience. And I honestly didn't ever picture myself being an official. I was approached, by a couple different people, and Bobby Rose, the head of officiating, he, in our area, he obviously is well known around here, and people have such great respect, and rightly so. Then you look at Eric Cheatley, Jim Appleby, guys that I've known for a long time, that I think back to my high school playing days. Those are the guys that I remember doing my games. You know what I mean? And, and so for them to just kind of see me and maybe my potential, and just kind of say, hey, take me under their wing, say, hey, you have potential, would you be interested in doing something like this? And then having the support from your family, because it's tough. You're spending nights away, from your family, or you're not at home. You're getting back oftentimes, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and you're leaving, at 7 o'clock the next day. It can wear on you. But it started there with with me coming right out of high school and right out of college, to where these guys pick up a kid and they say, hey, we're lacking officials. Would you be interested? And I think where it really starts, at least in my personal opinion, is it's going to start, with kids that are still wanting to give back to the game of basketball, and it's a way for them to stay involved. And a lot of times it's been, in my personal, for me, my experience was doing a lot of small ball first, get your feet wet, right? And then you work your way up, middle school level, JV, what have you, and putting in those experiences, because the officiating isn't something that you can just pick up and do. A lot of times, or you can't just pick up a rule book a lot of times and be a good official. It's personal experiences, right? Putting yourself in those situations and to make you better. And then honestly, the stories that you hear, from other guys. You're on a road trip, you're sitting in a car driving an hour and a half with a guy like Jim Appleby or Bob Rose or Brian Keeley or whatever, and them telling you different things, and you're picking up, different situations in the game that make you better. So, those are the things that stood out to me, as a young official. I mean, I'm still young, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it was. Those are the things that stood out to me when I first started.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I was god awful at the beginning. I wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
I was not a good official.
All right. Yeah, everybody's got to start somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah.
One thing that it seems like the perfect job for someone or perfect, obviously part-time job, but
yeah,
perfect situation for someone who is either in college, just graduated college, trying to save some money to buy a house,
right?
And so with we hear millennials are the hardest working generation in American history, work longer hours than any other generation, et cetera, with stagnant wages and all these other factors that it's shocking to me a little bit that there's such a shortage of officials coming out.
Yeah.
One thing is work schedules, obviously. Are there any factors that you've heard from people, whether it be people that don't want to be heckled or anything like that?
I think the biggest part is a lot of the things that I've heard, because we've had guys that used to officiate and they don't anymore. And I think the biggest thing has been either family, which is the biggest, in my opinion, because like I said, you're on the road a lot. And then also, fan base, that has a lot to do with it. You got people sitting in the stands. They only want what's right for their son or daughter, and I get that. But we're like in this kind of generation too, where officiating right now, and I'm not saying it hasn't ever been, because it always has, but right now we're in the spotlight as officials.
Okay.
You turn on your TV on ESPN, and how many times do you hear, an NBA player is going after an official or verbally abusing this guy, or they're always in the spotlight these days. So I think that plays a part in it as well. Nobody wants to do it because of that.
Okay.
Nobody wants to get ridiculed. It's easy to sit up in the stands and acknowledge that, hey, that was a foul. We miss them. It's going to happen.
Right.
But at the same time, I was talking to somebody, when I was doing a college game, and they brought up a good point. We don't go to your job,
right,
and pick on every little thing that you do. Right. And this isn't even for 95% of the people in our association. This isn't their full-time job, right? It's a part-time gig, and they're doing it just because they want to give back to the game.
Even in the NFL, right?
Even in the NFL,
Yep.
Exactly. So we don't go to your job and ridicule you. So I know I'm not going to change anything with what I'm saying here, right? But who are you to show up to the game and do this, right?
Right.
We all want what's best. I'm not out here to pick on number 10 out there, right? Or I'm not out there to pick on get it back at a sophomore on the basketball court. That's not why I do this. Right. So it's, that stood out to me when I talked to them about it. It's, that's something, officials talk. It's not an easy thing. You're out there and you have two buddies in the gym, and you know that. So you go in there with that kind of mentality, and you try to make the most of it. You try to have fun. And if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. I still have a lot of fun.
Kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, has there ever been a high school game where you haven't heard a fan call for 3 in the key?
Oh, we joke about that one all the time.
Yes.
It's I don't know. I've tried to put off the. A lot of times you don't hear. You just kind of go with it. A lot of times it's comical. You'll laugh. You'll get to that point where the little things won't irritate you as much. Or, Eric Cheatley's. For whatever reason, he pops into my mind whenever the 3 in the key gets brought up, because he's always had that mentality like, oh, hey, you're gonna say it, I'm not gonna call it. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that that's the way it is, but it's just funny that when you bring that up, it brings a smile to my face because that's something that we talk about all the time.
Right, and most
Three in the key,
most
three in the
people
key.
have no idea what
Right.
the rule is in the first place.
Hey,
It's,
come on! I
you
mean,
know,
who wants to sit here and watch a 3 in the key fest? You know, we
Right.
can sit here and all night and call the ticky tack travels or up top that aren't. Is it affecting the play?
Right, exactly.
No. If it's not affecting the play, we're going to move on and we're going to play basketball.
Yeah.
So we want to get into a flow, establish a flow, you know, every once in a while,
Right.
and you know, that's our goal. We don't want to slow the game down. We want to let the athletes be athletes.
Right. It's funny. Yeah, that's one thing. I've over the past year being here that I've noticed. It seems like you go to at least, you know, probably half the gyms in the area that I generally go to, and there's always one or two people who don't want the sport to actually be played. Right? You just want a call and, you know, a 3 in the key.
Yeah.
My thing is, if there's not a foul on every possession, then you're not playing basketball.
Right.
Period. So and that goes in football. If there's not a hold on every play, you're not playing football.
Being aggressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, because
That's part of the game.
yeah, exactly. So it's you know, to what extent is the holding, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah, and, you know, and as an official, you know, it kind of depends on the game that you're officiating too, right? That plays a huge part in it.
sure.
But you know, I've found, you know, we talk to a lot. If you can get those early fouls, a lot of times that cleans it up later on. You know, and you
Right.
end up having a better game in the second half. That's the goal in mind.
Right. Set the tone early and
Yeah.
that, exactly.
So
All right. Well, thanks, Brandon,
Yeah,
for
no
hanging out
problem.
with me, and thanks to Sterling Auto Group. And we'll see you guys next time.